In all my years of command, I thought I knew the meaning of war. Then I saw the humans fight. It wasn't a battle. It was a force of nature unleashed upon the galaxy. When Giants first whispered, Admiral Vextai stood on the bridge of his flagship Eternal Dominion, watching the star charts update with new territorial acquisitions. The massive Cronin warrior's 4 arms moved gracefully across the control surfaces as he reviewed the latest conquest reports. His species had ruled the galaxy for over 2,000 years, expanding their empire one system at a time. They were methodical, efficient, and absolutely unstoppable. The Cronins stood 12 feet tall with natural armor plating that could deflect most energy weapons. Their technology was advanced beyond anything most species could comprehend. Their military doctrine was perfect, tested across 47 successful planetary conquests. Vextai himself had overseen 15 of those victories, each one following the same predictable pattern. First, they would study the target species for several months. Then they would demonstrate their superior firepower with a single devastating attack. Finally, the local population would surrender rather than face total annihilation. It was efficient, clean, and remarkably bloodless for an interstellar empire. "Admiral," called Subcommander Kethran from the sensor station, "we have completed our initial survey of the Sol system. The inhabitants call themselves humans." Vextai examined the data flowing across his personal display. The third planet from their sun showed signs of a moderately advanced civilization, nuclear technology, primitive space travel, some evidence of orbital construction, nothing that posed any threat to the Cronin Empire. "Population assessment?" Vextai asked. "Approximately 8 billion on the primary world, with small colonies throughout their system. They appear to be divided into numerous competing factions. Our analysts detect ongoing military conflicts between various human nations." Vextai's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his people. A divided species fighting among themselves while barely achieving basic space travel. This would be the easiest conquest in recent memory. Standard protocol then. Deploy observation drones and begin the preliminary intimidation phase. I want this system added to our territory within the next solar cycle. 3 days later, Captain Sarah Chen was piloting her merchant vessel New Horizon through the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. The cargo ship was loaded with ice and rare minerals bound for the outer colonies. Sarah had been making this run for 5 years, ever since she left the Earth Defense Force to pursue more profitable ventures. Her crew was small but experienced. Marcus Torres served as both engineer and mechanic, capable of keeping their aging ship running with spare parts and ingenuity. Dr. Elena Vasquez was officially their medical officer, but her real expertise was in xenobiology. Not that they had ever encountered any aliens to study. "Sarah," Marcus called from the engine room, "I'm getting some weird readings on long-range sensors. There's something big moving in from the outer system." Sarah frowned as she checked her own instruments. Marcus was right. Several large objects were approaching from the direction of Pluto, moving far too fast to be natural phenomena. "Elena, can you make sense of these sensor readings?" Dr. Vasquez studied the data streaming across her console. Her expression grew increasingly concerned as the minutes passed. "These aren't human ships, Sarah. The energy signatures are completely unknown, and they're massive. Each one is at least 10 times larger than our biggest military vessels." Before Sarah could respond, her communication system crackled to life with a transmission unlike anything she had ever heard. The voice was deep and alien, speaking in perfectly clear English. "Human vessels, you are trespassing in territory claimed by the Cronin Empire. Cease all movement and prepare to be boarded for processing." Sarah's military training kicked in immediately. She had spent 8 years in the Defense Force, including 2 tours on the frontier patrol ships. She knew a threat when she heard one. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the merchant vessel New Horizon. We are in human space conducting lawful commerce. Identify yourselves and state your intentions." The response came not in words but in action. A beam of brilliant energy lanced out from the nearest alien ship, striking a nearby asteroid. The massive rock simply vanished, reduced to glowing particles in the space of a heartbeat. "That was a demonstration of our capabilities," the alien voice continued. "You will comply with our instructions or face the consequences." Sarah felt something cold and sharp settle in her stomach. These aliens had just casually destroyed an asteroid the size of a city block, but instead of fear, she felt something else rising in her chest. Anger. Pure, burning anger at the arrogance of these creatures who thought they could simply show up and start making demands. "Marcus, how fast can you get us to maximum acceleration?" "Give me 30 seconds to bypass the safety limiters." "Why, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking these aliens just made a very big mistake." Sarah opened a channel to Earth Defense Command, knowing her message would take several minutes to reach them. This is Captain Chen reporting contact with hostile alien forces in the asteroid belt. They have demonstrated advanced weapons capability and are claiming human territory. Am transmitting all sensor data. Recommend immediate alert status for all human colonies. She turned to Elena. Doctor, I need everything you can tell me about these ships from our sensor readings. Power output, structural analysis, anything that might give us an advantage. Elena was already deep in analysis mode, her fingers flying across her instruments. Sarah, their energy output is incredible, but there are some interesting patterns. Their power distribution suggests heavy shielding on the front sections, but the rear portions might be more vulnerable. Also, their ships seem to be designed for intimidation rather than maneuverability. Sarah smiled grimly. During her years in the Defense Force, she had learned that every ship, no matter how advanced, had weaknesses. The key was finding them and exploiting them before the enemy realized what was happening. Marcus, I need you to modify our mining charges. Can you rig them for remote detonation? Already on it, Captain, but what exactly are we planning to do with mining explosives against ships that can vaporize asteroids? We're going to teach these aliens something about human nature. Admiral Vextai watched the small human vessel with mild interest. The ship was clearly primitive, held together with what appeared to be spare parts and desperate ingenuity. Its crew of 3 posed no conceivable threat to his massive warship. This would be an excellent opportunity to demonstrate Cronin's superiority to any other human vessels in the area. Target their engines, he ordered. Disable them for boarding. But as his weapons officer prepared to fire, something unexpected happened. The human ship suddenly accelerated far beyond its apparent design specifications, moving with a reckless speed that should have torn the vessel apart. Instead of fleeing, however, it was heading directly toward the Cronin fleet. Admiral, his tactical officer reported with obvious confusion, the human vessel is on a collision course. They appear to be attempting a ramming attack. Vextai's mandibles clicked in amusement. Brave but futile. Destroy them. The Cronin gunner fired a focused energy beam at the approaching human ship, but instead of being vaporized, the vessel seemed to dance around the attack, its pilot executing maneuvers that defied both logic and physics. The ship spun and twisted through space like a leaf in a hurricane, somehow avoiding destruction while continuing its impossible approach. How are they moving like that? Demanded Sub-Commander Kethron. Before anyone could answer, the human ship released a spread of small objects that initially appeared harmless. Vextai realized too late that they were explosives, timed to detonate in a precise pattern that would overwhelm his ship's point defense systems. The mining charges exploded in sequence, each blast carefully calculated to disrupt the Cronin ship's shield harmonics. For just a moment, a small section of the massive warship's defenses flickered and failed. Sarah Chen did not waste the opportunity. She fired every weapon her small ship possessed through that brief gap in the alien shields. The merchant vessel's limited armament should have been utterly ineffective against Cronin armor, but Sarah had aimed for the most vulnerable point Elena had identified. The alien ship shuddered as human projectiles struck its rear sensor array. For the first time in over a century, a Cronin warship had been damaged by a primitive species. Vextai stared at his damage reports in disbelief. The attack had been impossible by every tactical standard he knew. The human ship was too small, too primitive, and too outnumbered to pose any threat. Yet somehow they had not only survived his weapons fire but had actually managed to inflict damage on his flagship. Pursue and destroy, he ordered, his voice tight with controlled fury. But the human ship was already gone, vanishing into the asteroid field with an intimacy of local space that spoke of years of experience. Sarah Chen had grown up navigating these rocks, and she used every piece of cover and gravitational anomaly to stay ahead of the alien pursuit. More importantly, she was broadcasting everything that had happened on every frequency she could access. Her message raced toward Earth and the outer colonies at the speed of light, carrying a warning that would change the course of human history. This is Captain Sarah Chen. We have made contact with hostile aliens who claim our territory as their own. They have advanced weapons, but they can be hurt. I repeat, they can be damaged. Do not let them intimidate you. Fight back with everything you have. Admiral Vextai eventually called off the pursuit, but the damage was done. The small human ship had done more than escape. It had done something no species had ever accomplished in 2,000 years of Cronin expansion. It had drawn first blood against the Empire. As news of the encounter spread throughout human space, something ancient and powerful began to stir. For thousands of years, humans had been evolving as survivors, adapters, and warriors. They had fought their way out of caves, across oceans, and into the stars themselves. They had survived ice ages, plagues, and countless wars against their own kind. Now, for the first time in generations, they had found an enemy that threatened not just their territory or their resources, but their very existence as a species. The scattered, squabbling nations of humanity began to remember something they had almost forgotten. They remembered how to unite against a common threat. Vextai returned to his flagship and began reviewing the tactical data from the encounter. What he saw challenged everything he thought he knew about warfare. The human ship had moved with impossible agility, struck with perfect timing, and escaped against overwhelming odds. Most disturbing of all, they had shown no fear. Even when facing certain death, the human crew had not begged for mercy or attempted to surrender. They had fought back with a ferocity that seemed to border on madness. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Vextai began to wonder if the Cronins might have underestimated their newest opponents. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Park received Sarah Chen's transmission and immediately convened an emergency session of the United Earth Defense Council. Representatives from every major nation and colony gathered virtually to discuss humanity's response to this unprecedented threat. The initial analysis is troubling, Park reported to the assembled leaders. These aliens possess technology far superior to our own. Their ships are massive, heavily armored, and capable of destroying asteroids with single shots. However, Captain Chen's encounter suggests they may not be invincible. General David Kumar of the Asian Defense Coalition leaned forward. What do we know about their tactics and capabilities? They appear to rely heavily on intimidation and overwhelming force. Their approach suggests they expect immediate surrender after a demonstration of power. Captain Chen's successful counterattack seems to have genuinely surprised them. President Maria Santos of the American Federation asked the question everyone was thinking. Can we actually fight these aliens and win? Admiral Park was quiet for a long moment before answering. I don't know if we can win a conventional war against their technology, but I think Captain Chen proved something important today. These aliens expect us to behave like every other species they've conquered. They expect us to be reasonable, logical, and willing to surrender when faced with superior force. She paused to let that sink in before continuing. But humans have never been particularly reasonable or logical when our survival is threatened, and we have one advantage these aliens might not expect. Which is? We've been fighting wars for our entire history. Not just against other species, but against nature, against disease, against impossible odds. We've learned to adapt, to improvise, and to never give up. These aliens have been conquering primitive civilizations for 2,000 years. They've never faced an enemy that gets stronger during conflict. The decision was unanimous. Humanity would not surrender. They would fight with everything they had, learn from every encounter, and adapt faster than their enemies could react. The message went out to every human settlement in the solar system within hours. Prepare for war. This was not a conflict that could be avoided through diplomacy or resolved through compromise. This was a fight for species survival, and humanity intended to win. Captain Sarah Chen received the recall order as she docked at Ceres Station. She was being reassigned to the hastily formed Rapid Response Fleet, where her experience with alien tactics would be invaluable. Marcus Torres and Dr. Elena Vasquez volunteered to serve with her, forming the core of what would become known as the Scavenger Corps. Their mission was simple in concept, but revolutionary in execution. They would study captured alien technology, adapt it for human use, and develop new weapons and tactics specifically designed to exploit alien weaknesses. Most importantly, they would teach the rest of humanity something that Captain Chen had discovered during her first encounter with the Cronins. These aliens could be beaten. It would require courage, creativity, and a willingness to fight against impossible odds. But humans had been doing exactly that for their entire evolutionary history. The war was about to begin, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of when their survival was at stake. When prey becomes predator. 6 months after first contact, Admiral Vextai stood before the holographic projections of the Cronin High Command, struggling to explain how a species armed with primitive missiles and projectile weapons had managed to destroy 17 of his warships. The humans refused to follow standard conquest protocols, he reported, his 4 arms gesturing at the tactical displays surrounding him. When we demonstrate superior firepower, they respond with increased aggression rather than surrender. When we destroy their installations, they rebuild them stronger than before. When we capture their technology, they somehow improve upon our own designs. Supreme Commander Thekvar, eldest member of the High Command, leaned forward in his crystalline throne. You are telling us that a species that has not even achieved faster-than-light travel is somehow matching our military capabilities? Not matching, Supreme Commander, exceeding them in certain areas. Vextai activated a series of combat recordings that still made his mandibles click in frustration. Observed their latest modifications to captured Cronin technology. The hologram showed a human ship that appeared to be cobbled together from spare parts and salvaged alien components. Its hull was a patchwork of different materials, held together with what looked like industrial adhesive and desperate hope. By all rights, the vessel should have fallen apart the moment it attempted to move. Instead, it moved with an agility that made Cronin engineers weep. The ship twisted through space in patterns that violated several laws of physics, executing maneuvers that should have liquefied any crew inside. But the humans not only survived these impossible accelerations, they seemed to thrive on them. How are they achieving these performance characteristics? Asked Technology Overseer Nextdoll. We believe they have discovered new applications for our gravitic manipulation systems. Applications that our own scientists never conceived. Vextai's admission hung in the air like a confession of heresy. More concerning, they appear to be developing these innovations during active combat situations. Captain Sarah Chen piloted her rebuilt ship Defiance through the debris field that had once been the Cronin orbital fortress above Europa. Her crew had grown from 3 to 30, all volunteers from various human military services who had requested transfer to the Scavenger Corps. Marcus, how are those new engines holding up? She called to her chief engineer. Marcus Torres wiped grease from his hands as he emerged from the engine compartment. The Cronin gravitic drives they had salvaged were now producing twice their original power output, achieved through modifications that alien engineers claimed were theoretically impossible. Running smooth as silk, Captain. The quantum resonance dampening field we jury-rigged from their shield generators is actually making the whole system more stable than the original design. Dr. Elena Vasquez looked up from her analysis station, where she was studying the latest batch of Cronin prisoners. Sarah, I think I've figured out why their technology responds so well to our modifications. Tell me. The Cronins design everything for maximum efficiency and reliability. Their systems are perfectly optimized for known parameters and expected conditions, but they never account for variables outside their original specifications. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. So when we start using their equipment in ways they never intended. Exactly. We're discovering capabilities that the original designers never realized existed. It's like finding out your kitchen knife can also function as a screwdriver, a lever, and a tuning fork. This was the heart of what humans had begun calling the scavenger protocol. Every piece of alien technology that fell into human hands was immediately disassembled, analyzed, and rebuilt according to human principles of creative engineering. The results were weapons and ships that often performed better than their original Cronin designs. More importantly, these hybrid human-alien technologies were being mass-produced in hidden facilities throughout the solar system. Asteroid mining stations had been converted into weapons factories. Scientific research stations now churned out experimental combat systems. Even civilian cargo ships were being retrofitted with salvaged alien weapons. Admiral Vextai had expected to face a primitive species with limited resources and predictable tactics. Instead, he found himself fighting an enemy that seemed to multiply in strength with every defeat. The turning point came during the Battle of Titan Station. Vextai had finally decided to end the conflict with overwhelming force, committing over 300 warships to a single decisive assault on humanity's largest military installation. Titan Station was humanity's primary shipyard and research facility, built into the methane-rich atmosphere of Saturn's largest moon. Its destruction would cripple human resistance and force the survivors to accept Cronin terms. The battle began exactly as Vextai had planned. His fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons charged and ready. Titan Station was heavily defended, but its garrison of 50 human ships was hopelessly outnumbered. Begin the bombardment, Vextai ordered. Target their production facilities first, then move to... Admiral, his sensor officer interrupted. The human fleet is not retreating, they're advancing to attack positions. Vextai studied his tactical display in confusion. The human ships were indeed moving forward, but not in any formation he recognized. Instead of organizing into traditional battle lines, they seemed to be spreading out randomly throughout the battle space. What are they attempting to accomplish with this maneuver? He got his answer when the human ships began to change. What had appeared to be individual vessels suddenly broke apart into smaller components. Each ship split into multiple sections that continued operating independently, transforming 50 ships into over 200 individual combat units. Modular construction, Elena Vasquez had explained to the design teams months earlier. Instead of building single large ships, we create smaller components that can separate during combat. Each module has its own power source, weapons, and life support. The enemy has to destroy every piece to stop us. But the real surprise came when the separated modules began to recombine in new configurations. Components from different ships linked together, creating hybrid vessels with capabilities that exceeded the sum of their parts. Heavy weapons modules combined with high-speed propulsion units. Shield generators clustered around groups of fighters to create mobile fortresses. Admiral Vextai watched in growing alarm as his numerical advantage evaporated. His 300 ships suddenly faced an enemy force that seemed to be constantly changing size, configuration, and capability. Focus fire on the largest concentrations, he ordered. Destroy their command vessels. But there were no command vessels. Every human pilot was trained to make independent decisions and adapt to changing circumstances. When Cronin forces destroyed what appeared to be leadership targets, other humans immediately stepped forward to fill the gap. Captain Sarah Chen coordinated the defense from her command module, but her role was more conductor than dictator. She provided information and suggestions, but every human captain had the authority to modify their tactics based on local conditions. All units, the Cronins are concentrating their fire on the station itself. Implement swarm pattern alpha and focus on their heavy cruisers. Immediately, dozens of human modules began moving in a complex pattern that resembled a school of fish avoiding a predator. They moved as individuals but with collective purpose, striking at Cronin weak points before disappearing back into the chaotic dance of battle. The effect on Cronin morale was devastating. They had trained for centuries to fight organized fleets with predictable tactics. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that fought like a living organism, adapting and evolving in real time. Their tactics make no sense, reported Subcommander Kethron. They sacrifice individual units without hesitation, but somehow maintain overall fleet cohesion. They attack our strongest points while ignoring obvious tactical advantages. Because they're not trying to win a traditional naval engagement, Vextai realized with growing horror. They're trying to learn how we fight so they can defeat us more effectively in the future. The Battle of Titan Station lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Cronin fleet was in full retreat, having lost over 100 ships to an enemy force that should have been annihilated in the first hour of combat. But the real victory was not measured in ships destroyed or territory defended. The human forces had captured dozens of intact Cronin vessels, along with their crews and technical specifications. More importantly, they had recorded every tactical decision and strategic maneuver the aliens had employed. Within weeks, this information was distributed to every human military unit in the solar system. The species that had once been prey was systematically learning to become predator. Dr. Elena Vasquez presented her findings to the Earth Defense Council 3 days after the battle. The data she had compiled was more valuable than any weapon humanity had ever possessed. We now understand the fundamental weakness in Cronin military doctrine, she reported to the assembled leaders. They've been so successful for so long that they've stopped evolving. Their tactics haven't changed in over 500 years. Admiral Lisa Park studied the tactical analysis with growing excitement. And we've been recording everything they do. Exactly. Every battle teaches us something new about their capabilities and limitations, but they're not learning anything about us because we never fight the same way twice. General David Kumar leaned forward. What's our next step? Elena smiled, and there was something predatory in her expression. We stop playing defense and start hunting them. The psychological impact on Cronin forces was immediate and severe. Their warriors had been conditioned to expect fear and submission from inferior species. Instead, they faced an enemy that seemed to grow more dangerous with every encounter. Worse yet, human forces had begun appearing in Cronin space, striking at supply lines and communication relays with weapons that were clearly derived from captured alien technology. The hunters were becoming the hunted, and they did not like the experience. Admiral Vextai found himself facing a situation that had never occurred in 2,000 years of Cronin expansion. His forces were being systematically outmaneuvered by a species that should have been extinct months ago. Status report, he demanded as he entered his command center. 3 more supply convoys attacked in the last solar cycle, reported his intelligence officer. The humans are using our own weapons against us, but modified for increased effectiveness. They're also employing tactics that our strategic computers cannot predict or counter. How is that possible? We believe they have developed a form of warfare based on continuous adaptation rather than fixed doctrine. Every time we adjust our defenses, they modify their attack methods. It's as if they're treating the entire conflict as a learning experience. Vextai felt something he had never experienced in his long military career: doubt. For the first time, he began to wonder if the Cronin Empire had encountered an enemy they could not defeat. On Earth, humanity was discovering something about itself that had been forgotten during centuries of peace. When faced with extinction, they did not simply fight harder. They evolved. Captain Sarah Chen now commanded a fleet of over 200 ships, all constructed using hybrid human-Cronin technology. Her crews included veterans from dozens of human nations who had set aside ancient rivalries to face a common threat. "Target the Cronin staging area in the asteroid belt," she ordered. "It's time to take this war to them." The species that had once cowered before alien superiority was about to teach the galaxy a lesson about human nature. When threatened with extinction, humans did not surrender or flee. They adapted, evolved, and became something more dangerous than their enemies had ever imagined possible. When evolution becomes revolution. 1 year after first contact, the war had spread beyond Earth's solar system. Human ships, now incorporating advanced alien technology with uniquely human innovations, were striking deep into Cronin territory. What had begun as an invasion had become something unprecedented in galactic history. Admiral Vextai stood in what remained of his command center aboard the Eternal Dominion, trying to comprehend reports that defied everything he understood about warfare. His fleet had been reduced from over 1,000 ships to fewer than 200 functional vessels. Worse yet, humanity's capabilities seemed to be growing exponentially with each passing month. "The humans have established permanent bases in 4-star systems within our territory," reported his tactical officer. "They're not just raiding our supply lines anymore, they're colonizing our space." Vextai studied the holographic display showing human expansion. The pattern was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Instead of consolidating territory and building defensive positions, human forces were spreading outward like a living organism, adapting to each new environment they encountered. How are they supporting these operations? Their industrial base should be insufficient for this level of expansion. "That's the problem, Admiral. They're not relying on traditional supply lines. Each human outpost appears to be self-sufficient within weeks of establishment. They're using local resources and captured equipment to build whatever they need." Supreme Commander Thekvar materialized as a hologram in Vextai's command center, his crystalline features displaying the stress fractures that indicated extreme agitation among his species. "Report on the current strategic situation," Thekvar demanded. "The humans have achieved something we believed impossible," Vextai admitted. "They have turned our own advantages against us. Our superior technology is now being used to enhance their capabilities. Our strategic doctrine is being studied and countered. Our territorial control is being systematically dismantled. Explain how a primitive species has accomplished this." Vextai activated a series of recorded encounters that still made his mandibles click in disbelief. "They don't fight wars the way we understand them. Every battle is an experiment. Every defeat teaches them something new. Every victory shows them a new possibility they hadn't considered." The recordings showed human forces engaged in tactics that violated every principle of military science. Ships that should have been destroyed continued fighting with sections blown away and systems failing. Crews that should have surrendered used their own vessels as weapons when conventional armaments failed. Most disturbing of all, humans seemed to thrive on adversity. The more pressure they faced, the more creative and dangerous they became. Captain Sarah Chen now held the rank of Fleet Admiral, commanding a force that included representatives from over 50 human colonies. Her flagship New Earth was a hybrid vessel that incorporated technology from 6 different alien species they had encountered during their expansion into Cronin space. "Admiral," reported her intelligence officer, Commander Lisa Torres, "we've intercepted communications suggesting the Cronins are planning to withdraw from our original solar system." Sarah studied the tactical display showing current fleet positions. Human forces now controlled a sphere of influence that encompassed over 30 star systems, each one defended by locally produced ships and weapons. "They're learning," she observed, finally realizing that this isn't a conventional conquest they can win through superior firepower. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now Director of Xenotechnology Development, looked up from her analysis station. "Sarah, I think we need to prepare for a different kind of war. Our latest intelligence suggests the Cronins are reaching out to other galactic powers." "What kind of other powers?" "Species with capabilities we haven't encountered yet. The Cronins have been the dominant force in this region for 2,000 years, but they're not the only advanced civilization in the galaxy. If they form alliances with other empires..." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. This had always been a possibility, but humanity's rapid expansion had apparently forced the issue faster than anyone expected. "Then we need to make sure we're ready for whatever they bring against us." "How are the new ship designs progressing?" Marcus Torres, now Chief Technology Officer for the entire human fleet, activated a holographic display showing their latest innovations. We've completed integration of captured technology from 3 different species. The new ships are faster, more heavily armed, and more adaptable than anything we've built before. But the real advancement was not in technology. Over the past year, humanity had discovered something about itself that explained why they had been so successful against seemingly impossible odds. Humans were the only known species that became stronger through conflict. Every other intelligent race in the galaxy had evolved strategies for avoiding or minimizing warfare. They had developed efficient methods for conquest and submission that reduced casualties and preserved resources. Humans had evolved to fight. For millions of years, they had survived by adapting to challenges that would have destroyed other species. Ice ages, natural disasters, predators, disease, and warfare against their own kind had created a species that thrived on adversity. Now, faced with an external threat to their very existence, humans were discovering capabilities they never knew they possessed. Admiral Lisa Park addressed the United Earth Defense Council from her headquarters on Luna, which had been transformed into the primary military command center for human space. "Our expansion has exceeded all projections," she reported. "Human colonies are now established in 37 star systems. Our industrial output has increased by over 500% through integration of alien technology. Most importantly, we've established contact with 14 non-hostile alien species who were previously under Cronan dominance." President Maria Santos leaned forward. "What's their response to our presence?" "Mixed, but generally positive. Most of these species have been paying tribute to the Cronans for centuries. They see our success as an opportunity for their own liberation." General David Kumar asked the crucial question. "Are any of them willing to fight alongside us?" "Several have already requested military cooperation agreements. The Zalathi have provided us with advanced sensor technology. The Morden have shared their expertise in asteroid mining and mobile construction. The Cathara have offered to serve as scouts and intelligence gatherers." This was an unexpected development that had profound implications for the war. Humanity was not just fighting the Cronans anymore. They were leading a galactic revolution against an empire that had dominated this region of space for millennia. The psychological impact on Cronan forces was catastrophic. Reports filtered back to their high command describing human ships that seemed to repair themselves during battle, crews that fought with suicidal determination, and weapons that improved in effectiveness with each engagement. But the most disturbing reports came from Cronan prisoners who had been captured by human forces. Instead of being executed or enslaved, they were being studied, questioned, and then released with detailed messages for their commanders. Sub-Commander Kethron had been captured during a failed assault on the human stronghold at Proxima Centauri. He expected torture, interrogation, and eventual death. Instead, he found himself in what humans called a prisoner exchange facility. Dr. Elena Vasquez personally conducted his debriefing, asking questions that revealed a deep understanding of Cronan psychology and military doctrine. "Your empire has been successful for 2,000 years, she observed. But success has made you predictable. You follow the same patterns, use the same tactics, expect the same responses from your enemies." Kethron remained silent, but Elena continued as if he had asked a question. "Humans are different. We've spent our entire evolutionary history fighting impossible odds and winning, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through adaptation and creativity. Every challenge makes us stronger. Every defeat teaches us something new." She activated a holographic display showing the current state of the war. Human territory now extended deep into what had once been Cronan space, with new colonies being established faster than the alien empire could respond. "Your commanders are trying to fight a conventional war against an unconventional enemy. They're using strategies designed to defeat species that think and behave like Cronans, but we're not like any species you've encountered before." Kethron was released 3 days later with a message for Admiral Vextai. The message was simple and terrifying in its implications. "This war ends when you withdraw from all human territory and release all species currently under Cronan domination. There will be no negotiation on these terms. Every day you delay, our capabilities grow stronger and our territory expands further into your space." Admiral Vextai received the message while overseeing the evacuation of yet another Cronan outpost. Human forces had appeared seemingly from nowhere, overwhelmed the defenders with tactics that defied all military logic, and claimed the system for their expanding territory. "They're not just defeating us," he reported to the High Command. "They're transforming the nature of warfare itself. Every engagement teaches them something new about combat, technology, and strategy. Meanwhile, our own forces are becoming demoralized and ineffective. Supreme Commander Thekvar's holographic form flickered with agitation. Have you identified any weaknesses in their capabilities? None that we can exploit. Their greatest strength appears to be their ability to turn weaknesses into advantages. When we destroy their ships, they salvage the wreckage and build better vessels. When we capture their technology, they develop countermeasures faster than our scientists can analyze their original designs. What do you recommend? For the first time in his military career, Admiral Vextai was forced to speak words that had never been uttered in Cronin military history. I recommend we negotiate a withdrawal from human space before they decide to take the war directly to our core worlds. The final confrontation came not through military action, but through a demonstration that shattered Cronin confidence completely. Captain Sarah Chen, now commanding a fleet of over 1,000 ships, appeared in the Cronin home system without triggering any of their early warning systems. Her vessels materialized simultaneously around every major Cronin installation, from orbital shipyards to planetary defense platforms. But instead of attacking, the human fleet simply waited in perfect formation while Sarah broadcast a message to the Cronin leadership. "We could have destroyed your entire home system before your defenses knew we were here," she announced calmly. "Our ships are faster than yours, our weapons are more effective, and our technology is advancing faster than your scientists can comprehend." Admiral Vextai stood on his command bridge, staring at tactical displays that showed human ships surrounding every critical installation in Cronin space. The demonstration was flawless and terrifying. If the humans had chosen to attack, the war would have ended in a matter of hours. "But we're not here to destroy you," Sarah continued. "We're here to offer you a choice. You can continue this war and face complete defeat, or you can accept new terms for coexistence in this galaxy." The terms were unlike anything in galactic history. Instead of demanding tribute or territorial concessions, humanity proposed something revolutionary, a confederation of free species working together for mutual benefit rather than domination. "Every species has something unique to contribute," Sarah explained. Cronin engineering precision, human adaptability, Zalathi sensor technology, Morden construction expertise. Working together, we can achieve things that none of us could accomplish alone. Supreme Commander Thekvar materialized as a hologram on Sarah's bridge, his crystalline features showing stress fractures that indicated profound emotional turmoil. "You defeated our empire," he acknowledged. "By rights, you could claim our territory and enslave our population. Why are you offering cooperation instead of conquest?" Sarah smiled, and there was something both predatory and compassionate in her expression. "Because humans learned something important during this war. We're at our best when we're fighting for something rather than against something. Fighting against your empire made us stronger, but building something better than empire will make us stronger still." The Cronin leadership agreed to the Confederation terms after witnessing one final demonstration of human capabilities. In the space of 6 months, human forces had liberated over 200 star systems from Cronin control and established thriving colonies that were already developing new technologies and trade relationships. More importantly, they had accomplished all of this while treating captured Cronin forces with a combination of firmness and respect that no conquered species had ever experienced. Admiral Vextai found himself serving as military advisor to the new Confederation, helping to develop defensive strategies for systems that had been freed from Cronin control. It was a strange role reversal that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. "How did you know we would accept your terms?" he asked Sarah during one of their planning sessions. "Because you're intelligent enough to recognize a superior strategy when you see one," she replied. "Your empire was built on fear and subjugation. Our confederation is built on cooperation and mutual benefit. Which approach do you think will be more successful in the long run?" Vextai considered the question while studying reports from newly liberated systems. Species that had been oppressed for centuries were now contributing innovations and resources to the confederation. Former enemies were becoming allies. Ancient grudges were being set aside in favor of common goals. "Humans are remarkable," he finally admitted. "You've achieved something we thought impossible." "What's that?" "You've made war obsolete by creating something better than victory." Dr. Elena Vasquez published her final report on human-alien conflict resolution 6 months after the establishment of the Confederation. Her findings were distributed to every member species and became the foundation for what would later be known as the Human Doctrine. Humans succeed in warfare not because they're more aggressive or better armed than their enemies, she wrote. They succeed because they're the only known species that becomes stronger through adversity. Every challenge forces them to adapt, evolve, and discover new capabilities. But their greatest strength is their ability to transform enemies into allies. Rather than destroying opposition, they absorb it and make it part of their own strength. This creates a snowball effect where their power grows geometrically rather than arithmetically. The Confederation grew rapidly as word spread throughout the galaxy. Species that had been isolated or oppressed for centuries requested membership. Former enemies became partners in exploration and development. Ancient technologies were shared and improved through cross-species cooperation. Captain Sarah Chen, now Admiral of the Confederation Fleet, stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the construction of humanity's first interstellar research station. The massive structure was being built using contributions from dozens of different species, each one adding their unique expertise to create something unprecedented. "Status report," she requested. Commander Lisa Torres smiled as she read from her display. 17 new species have requested Confederation membership this month. Our exploration fleets have made contact with 3 previously unknown civilizations. The research station will be operational ahead of schedule. Any signs of hostile activity? None within Confederation space. Our early warning networks are detecting some movement in the outer rim, but nothing that appears to pose an immediate threat. Sarah nodded with satisfaction. The galaxy was a larger place than any of them had imagined, full of wonders and challenges that no single species could face alone. But working together, they were discovering capabilities that exceeded anything they had dreamed possible. Marcus Torres appeared on the bridge, his engineering uniform stained with the evidence of another successful technical breakthrough. "Sarah, you need to see what we've accomplished with the new propulsion systems. We're not just talking about faster-than-light travel anymore. We're talking about instantaneous transportation across galactic distances." The implications were staggering. If humans could master instantaneous travel, the Confederation could expand beyond their current galaxy to explore others. The universe itself was becoming their laboratory. "How soon before we can test it?" "Give us 6 months to work out the safety protocols." "But Sarah, this changes everything. We're not just talking about exploration anymore. We're talking about unlimited expansion into infinite possibilities." Admiral Vextai watched these developments with a mixture of admiration and amazement. The species he had once dismissed as primitive had become the driving force behind a revolution that was transforming galactic civilization. "They never stop evolving," he reported to the Cronin High Command during one of their regular briefings. "Every achievement becomes the foundation for the next breakthrough. Every problem becomes an opportunity for innovation." "Do you believe the Confederation will remain stable?" asked Supreme Commander Thekvar. "As long as humans are involved, yes. They have a unique talent for turning diversity into strength. Instead of trying to make everyone the same, they celebrate differences and find ways to make them complementary." "And if the Confederation encounters a threat it cannot handle?" Vextai was quiet for a long moment before answering. "Then that threat will discover what we learned during our war with humanity. When humans are faced with impossible odds, they don't just find a way to survive. They find a way to win, and they make everyone around them stronger in the process." 3 years after first contact, the Confederation encompassed over 300 star systems and included 47 different species. Trade routes connected worlds that had never known peace. Scientific research was advancing at unprecedented rates. Art, culture, and philosophy were flourishing as different civilizations shared their unique perspectives. But perhaps most importantly, the galaxy had learned something new about the nature of conflict and cooperation. War was not inevitable. Domination was not necessary. Different species could work together to achieve things that none of them could accomplish alone. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of Confederation Central, watching ships from dozens of different worlds arriving and departing in a constant stream of commerce and exploration. Her reflection in the viewing port showed a woman who had aged beyond her years, but whose eyes still held the fire that had carried humanity through its darkest hour. "Any regrets?" asked Dr. Elena Vasquez, joining her at the observation window. "About the war? No. About how long it took us to discover what we were truly capable of? Sometimes. Humanity needed that war," Elena observed. "We needed to be challenged by something bigger than ourselves. We needed to discover that we could be more than just another species fighting for survival." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "We needed to learn that our greatest strength isn't our ability to fight. It's our ability to transform enemies into allies and create something better than what existed before." In the distance, construction continued on the first Confederation ship designed for intergalactic exploration. Soon, they would carry their message of cooperation and mutual benefit to other galaxies, other civilizations, other challenges that would test the limits of what was possible. The war that had begun with humanity facing extinction had ended with them leading a revolution that was transforming the nature of galactic civilization. They had proved that when faced with impossible odds, humans didn't just survive, they evolved, they adapted, they made everyone around them stronger, and they never, ever gave up. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly what humanity had intended from the moment they decided to fight back against seemingly insurmountable odds. The species that had once been considered primitive and divided had become the catalyst for a new age of exploration, cooperation, and unlimited possibility. The war was over. The revolution had just begun.